1 o'clock and it's time to get started. I am so excited for those that have joined live and for those that are going to catch the replay. My name is Dana Stone and I am the owner of Rest Assured Consulting, and I'm a child sleep consultant. And today we are going to talk about the 5 most common mistakes that I see around toddler and preschool sleep. A lot of times I see parents that have struggled for years with sleep, or maybe their child was a good sleeper as an infant, but when they got a little bit older, they learned that they had some freedom and they started to have sleep issues where they maybe would hold you hostage at bedtime for hours, trying to get them to go to sleep, or maybe they need to sleep in your bed, or maybe they need you to lay next to them in their bed all night long. And this can just cause a whole host of issues. Now, what I tell a lot of the families that I work with is that it's not an issue until it's an issue. And so a lot of times there's a lot of guilt associated with sleep. People feel like everything that they've done it wrong, it's all their fault. And I just really want you to erase all of that from your mind and just know that I come from a place where I did co-sleep, and we did that for a while until it didn't work for us anymore. And you'll hear a little bit more about my story and how I became a sleep consultant. But really, I'm here to support you as a family. I'm here to support you in getting your toddler sleeping. I'm here to support you to find what works for you in a way that you feel good about, okay? So today we are going to talk quite a bit about what I have found over the last few years, but I thought I might start with a whole, well, who the heck am I and why should you even care what I think? So I'm, again, Dana Stone, and I have been a sleep consultant now for 5 years. And so this is my beautiful family. As you can see, I am not a rookie mom. I've been around for a minute. My oldest 2 are 21 now, and my youngest just started kindergarten. So we have a very wide range. I have 4 children. And so if you look back maybe, let's see, 5 years ago, I would have had a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And so the hardest part of all of this, I was working full-time. My husband traveled quite a bit for his job. My oldest was just learning how to drive, didn't really have a car, I don't think. My youngest was a year old and had not slept a single night. And that was super hard. And so one day I just broke and I thought, you know what? Somebody somewhere had a child that didn't sleep. How did they fix this? Little did I know that there was this whole world around infant and toddler sleep. And when I started to dive into it, I was so overwhelmed. There was a whole bunch of contradicting information. You should do this. You should never do this. You should always do this. Never, ever do that. And it left me feeling very overwhelmed. And it made me feel really bad about myself as a mom where I was. Here, again, I was no rookie, right? I had 3 children already, but I was super lucky in the fact that they were all really good sleepers. And I thought that Colton, my youngest, was just broken. Like, what was wrong with him? Or maybe it was something I did because I was holding on a little bit too long. He was my last child, and I knew that he was the last one. And so many things going through my head, but I found help. And with the help of Dana Obelman, Sleep Sense, I was able to get my son sleeping in 5 nights. 12 hours sleeping through the night, whereas the previous year, I had not slept a single night that entire time. And, except for when I traveled away from my child one time. So it was really hard on all of us that year. And what I found, kind of looking back now, it was not only hard on me. It was not only hard on Colton. It was hard on my teenagers. It was hard on my toddler. It was hard on my husband, because, you know, that whole saying about if mama's not happy, nobody's happy. Well, it's kind of true. And it's hard for me to be the best mom that I wanted to be if I was sleep deprived and I had a short fuse and I was constantly screaming and yelling at the older kids, and I wasn't really there for the younger ones because I was so exhausted. I was trying to do my best. And so that's what I'm here for today, because I want to be able to support you guys, be able to help you through those really difficult times. And over the last 5 years, as I've been working with families, I've kind of grown to love working with this age group, especially. Now, a toddler, I would say probably is anywhere from about 18 months to about 5 years, you know, in that preschool age range. Now, specifically, the stuff that we're going to be covering today kind of falls more towards like the 2.5 to 5 year range, maybe even 6-year-olds, you know, on up into that first grade age. I find a lot of these things apply. And I've just seen these common traits that show up again and again when I'm working with families. And so if we can kind of cue in on those things, this may be enough to help you kind of implement some things in your own routine, in your own family. It could start to scratch the surface and help you see where you need to be concentrating. You might need a little bit more help. And so maybe this kind of gets the things going, but you think, you know what, I think it would be great to kind of dig in a little bit more on this. So there's different levels and you'll be at different places. So, oh, and I decided to get certified through SleepSense, Infant Mental Health Studies. I've gone on, I was actually named one of the top 200 consultants in the US by Tech.com, which was an amazing recognition. And so I just want you to know that this is not just some mom who just randomly said, yeah, I can get your kid to sleep. I've done a lot of studies on this stuff. I've really worked hard to get an education in place. So I hope that you'll be able to take some of this away today. So if I can get my slide to change here. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to talk a little bit about sleep debt and sleep needs. We're going to cover those 5 most common mistakes that I see around toddler sleep. We'll dig into the 2 biggest struggles that I see toddlers and preschoolers really dealing with. Developmentally, there's a lot going on. And so if we can kind of identify what toddlers and preschoolers are needing at this age, what we can fill them up with, it can really help to take those struggles off of bedtime. We'll talk about some ways that I can help, and we'll do questions. I love to answer questions because I was once where you were, and there was no magic fix, but there's been a lot of education that has helped me across the way here, and I'm happy to share that with you. We'll talk about how you can connect with me. We'll introduce like a monthly Q&A is what I'm hoping to do for, you know, just all of my fans, all of my past clients. Also, you can catch me at Winning at the Mom Life podcast. So if you kind of like the way that I view the world and you want to share that journey with me, I have a podcast that has a new episode launch every Tuesday. I also have a Facebook group called Rest for Mommies that you can join. And here I try to support the community with evidence-based sleep. So let's get started. So I always like to talk about the idea of sleep debt. And every day when you wake up, you start to accumulate sleep debt. Whether you're a brand new newborn or an 80-year-old grandmother, you start to accumulate this sleep debt, and you accumulate it all day long. Now, for adults, we consolidate our sleep at the end of the day. So by the end of the day, we've got all this fatigue on us, and at the end of the day, we're going to sleep, and we're going to sleep off this sleep debt until the morning, and hopefully we're paying it back into some kind of balance. But what happens more often than not is we're not paying off all that sleep debt. So for every 2 hours that an adult is awake, they accumulate 1 hour of sleep debt. Okay, so by an average adult is going to get up around 6 a.m. and go to bed around 10 p.m. And so by the end of the day, that's 16 hours of awake time. And at the end of the day, you've accumulated 8 hours of sleep debt. And so that 8 hours of sleep that we need each night, right? That adds up to your 24-hour day, 16 hours a week, 8 hours of sleep. So usually what happens is at night you tend to have to stay up late for something at work, or maybe there is a show that you want to watch, or maybe there is a reason that you have to get up early the next morning. And so instead of getting those 8 hours of sleep, maybe you only get 7, or maybe you get 6. What I like to visualize is that for every 2 hours that you're awake during the day, you put a brick into your backpack that you're wearing every day. And so by the end of that day, you've got 8 bricks, and you have to pay those bricks off, 1 brick for 1 hour of sleep. Well, by the end of, so you say you only got 7 hours of sleep, that next morning you're waking up and you already have a brick in your backpack. You go throughout the whole day. By the end of the day, you've got now 9 bricks in your backpack, and you're headed off into sleep. And maybe you only get 7 hours again. So the next day you have 2 bricks in your backpack. You see where this is going, right? And so every day we're accumulating that sleep debt, and maybe we're not paying it quite back all the way. And we're just accumulating and accumulating and accumulating until our body can't take it anymore. And what tends to happen here is we get sick. What happens when we're sick? We are forced to rest. Our body says you have to have sleep, you have to have rest. And it will start to pay it back, maybe not all the way, but at least we're functioning again. So this same mentality is true for children. It's just that they don't get as much awake time as an adult. Straight home from the hospital, a newborn can only handle about 45 minutes of awake time before they need to be sleeping again. Okay, I know that seems like a super short amount of time, but that's why newborns are sleeping 16 to 18 hours a day. They also don't consolidate their sleep, so they're not having full nights of rest, right? That's why you'll see them wake up every 2 to 3 hours through the night, because they need to be fed, and they stay on this clock until they start to consolidate that sleep. Now, usually around the 4-month-old age range, and you may have heard about the 4-month sleep regression, this is when newborn sleep changes and it starts to mimic that of an adult's sleep. Okay, so fresh out of the womb, you only have 2 stages of sleep. You have REM sleep and you have deep sleep. But when you're 4 months old, you start to transition, and you now have 4 stages within your non-REM sleep, and then you have REM sleep. So you have stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and REM. So this opens up a whole new host of issues as the body starts to transition and mimic this adult sleep. Now, we go through a lot more detail in that, because I think understanding how sleep works is a really big indicator of how you will treat sleep and why kids are waking in the middle of the night. Okay, but for now, we're just going to talk about how much sleep do they need. Now, straight home from the hospital, 16 to 18 hours is needed for our bodies to really function properly. As they get older, those wake windows grow. And so I kind of look at it the opposite of they need less sleep. It's really like they're able to stay awake longer and longer and longer. And so what I have found is that each month of their first year of life, they're able to handle about 15 more minutes of awake time. Okay, so by the time they're a month old, they can handle about 1 hour of awake time before they need to be sleeping again. By the time they're 2 months old, they can handle 1 hour and 15 minutes. And this just continues to grow and grow. So that by the time they're a year old, this is when they've kind of consolidated down to 1 nap in the middle of the day and their sleep at night. And they can usually handle about 5 to 6 hours of awake time. Now, nailing that wake time is one of the biggest keys to sleeping through the night. Okay, we'll get to that a little bit more as we go on. But really, sleep promotes alertness, memory, performance. Children that get enough sleep are more likely to function better. They're less prone to behavior problems and moodiness. If you see kids having constant meltdowns, a lot of that is because they're not getting the right amount of sleep. And it's important for parents to start early so that they can help really lay a really good foundation for sleep skills. And you'll find that a lot of adults that have grown up to really have poor sleep habits actually started all the way back in infancy. And it's just a cycle that continues to happen. All right, so let's move right into the 5 biggest things that I see kind of happening across the board with the families that I personally work with, okay? So the first one is the use of external strategies to get our children to fall asleep. Now, when I get ready for bed, maybe you'll agree that sleep is not just 1 second you're awake and the next second you're asleep, right? There is a journey that takes place. And when we assume that it's just like a light, you know, that's a real detriment to sleep, okay? So when I'm getting ready for bed, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna brush my teeth and I'm going to wash my face and I'm gonna put my PJs on. I'm gonna get on the left side of the bed. I have to have the fan on. I can't have socks on. I have to have water next to the bed. There's all these things that I know have to happen pretty much in that same order, and it has to happen every night. If I get into the bed and I realize the fan is not on, I will not be able to go to sleep usually until I get up, I go turn the fan on, and I get back in bed, okay? So this is the journey that takes place. Now, anything that we use in that journey to sleep is called a sleep prop. And these are what I'm talking about when I say external strategies. Now, is every sleep prop bad? No. The ones that I really have an issue with are the ones that are dependent upon somebody else. So say the sleep prop is a bottle. Well, a toddler or a infant or whoever, they can't get up in the middle of the night, make themselves a bottle, lay back down and go to sleep, right? So this is what I'm talking about with the external strategies. So what we have to do is we have to focus on teaching them independent sleep skills so that when we get to bedtime, we're able to walk into the room, kiss them on the head, and they know what they need to do. And they know that they need to roll over and go to sleep. Now, I will tell you that especially in this toddler, the younger toddler age range, they do not even realize that they have to be lying down for sleep to come. This is not very uncommon for me to see. And sometimes we will actually see where the first couple of nights they might stand as they're going to sleep, okay? So that's why I know that this is critical in figuring out how to sleep through the night, okay? So the next one we're gonna cover is consistency. Now, what I see here around consistency is that we will not give things long enough. Once you have, maybe you read a blog post and it said you needed to try a couple things and you tried them one night and it didn't work, and so you just threw it out the window and said it doesn't work. What I found is that there is a reason that my plans when I'm working with clients are 14 days long, maybe even 3 weeks worth of just really working on establishing new habits. Another big thing I see around consistency is that there are 2 big struggles that every toddler is usually struggling with, and this is developmentally, it's an age thing, but usually it's power and attention, okay? And what happens when they don't have enough power is, what is the one thing that you cannot force a person to do? You cannot force them to go to sleep, right? That all has to happen within. They have to do that themselves. Now, you can be aiding them by rocking and patting and hushing and laying next to them, but ultimately, sleep has to happen from within. And so when there are any kind of power struggles, a lot of times we'll see that come up at bedtime because they have all the power and they know we will do whatever it takes to get them sleeping. So we will pat them for 2 hours. We will rock them for 30 minutes. We will do whatever it takes as long as they're going to go to sleep, because they need sleep, we know it, and we need sleep. right? And so when they hold all the power, it really makes things difficult. So what we do, what I tend to do with my clients, is we will find ways to fill up their power cup and their attention cup at some other point in the day. There's several strategies that we use for this. Maybe it's one-on-one time, maybe it's role playing, maybe there's other things that you can do to give them a voice. I actually just did a podcast with a marriage and family counselor all about giving your child a voice. And what it does is it really fills up that power need or that attention struggle, okay? And we take it off of bedtime so that by the time they get to bed, they feel like they have been heard. They feel like there's no need to hold you hostage because they know they're going to get their one-on-one time with you the next day. And the power struggles seem to disappear. You won't see as many behavior issues as well because they're starting to sleep better at night. And so it's a really big cycle. And so consistency is at the root of this. I also say that any big meltdown that I've generally seen in my children is usually revolved around some kind of consistency. And I can tell you this is all the way from newborn all the way up to 21 years old. If you see some kind of struggle or meltdown or fight between you and your child, there's usually consistency issues with the parent, okay? Not to say this is you're all to blame because there are really good reasons why you may not be consistent, but I really want you to think about this statement, and I really want you to think about any time that your child has ever struggled with meltdowns and pushback. So like an example is if a child comes into the kitchen every time you're in there and they ask for a snack and you give them a snack. The next time they come in, they say, can I have a snack? Sure, get a snack. They come in, can I have a snack? Sure, get a snack. Well, then the next time they come in and say, can I get a snack? And you are like, no, it's too close to dinner time. I really don't want you to have a snack right now. Well, all of a sudden, the world is just melting down around them because they cannot have this snack. And a lot of it is around this consistency. Toddlers and preschoolers especially live in a very black and white world. They live in a yes or no world. There's not a lot of room for gray. Gray is where meltdowns occur. If they know that they're consistently not able to do something, they will eventually stop pushing there and know that that's a rule. But if sometimes it occurs and sometimes it doesn't, well, typically what they've learned is to just continue to push back, melt down, or throw a fit until they get whatever it is that they want. And so I really want you to think about some ways that maybe the last meltdown that your toddler had was around inconsistency, okay? Number 3, we're already on number 3. Okay, so the biggest thing here is dropping naps too soon. And I see this in a lot of cases. And I know that naps do tend to become harder sometimes with toddlers, okay? So around 18 to 24 months, this is a really big time that I start to see pushback around naps. Usually it's developmentally. They're starting to establish their independence. They're starting to push back, and they're starting to realize that they can refuse things, right? And that they have the power here. And what a lot of times happens is parents will get very frustrated. They will give up very soon, and they'll just think, oh, well, my toddler doesn't need to nap. And this is kind of detrimental because it is very, very difficult for an 18, sometimes even 5-year-olds still need that nap. So it can be a big range. Usually the earliest that I would ever really say is okay to drop the nap would maybe be 3.5 to 4 years old. I have seen children successfully drop naps around that age. Now your body can adjust to things. And if you have a toddler that maybe dropped their nap at 2 years old, and they seem to be doing okay with it, chances are it was too soon and their body just worked really, really hard to adapt. So going from one nap to no nap is one of the hardest transitions sleep-wise that a body has to make, because you go from a 5 or 6 hour wake window And there's lots of things happening in the body chemically, like hormonally. We have a hormone called adenosine that builds up in our body every time that we're awake. And when we're asleep, we're kind of flushing it back out. This is what puts sleep pressure on us. Okay, so that feeling of sleep pressure, that tiredness, that fatigue, it builds up. And if they are used to having a nap after 5 or 6 hours, and now all of a sudden they're going, 12 hours without a nap, that is a really long time to be awake. And so a lot of times I will have to add a nap back in. Now, a lot of times they will be there will be a lot of pushback in the beginning, but ultimately you're going to have a lot more well-behaved child. They're going to be less cranky. They're going to sleep better at night because there is a direct correlation between daytime sleep quality and nighttime sleep quality. And when a child is awake for too long during the day, it becomes very hard for them to find sleep. Okay, so let me kind of dig into that a little bit more. Wake windows we talked about earlier, and I said, straight home from the hospital, you can handle about 45 minutes, and it grows by about 15 minutes each month. Nailing that wake window is huge. If you have the wake window is maybe 3 hours, and you're trying to put a child to sleep at the 2-hour mark, there's going to be fussing and crying and screaming, and they're just going to fight that nap all day long. If you try to put a child to sleep at 4 hours when they should be at 3 hours, they're going to be so overtired, they're going to be so exhausted that they're going to be fighting and pushing back, and they don't realize that the feeling that they have is fatigue. And so they won't just, oh, okay, sleep, that sounds like a good idea. They're just going to be overexhausted, and they're going to fight you on it. And so nailing that wake window is a huge part of the success of my programs. Okay. So the next one, we're dropping those naps too soon, but in addition to that, we're putting our kids to bed too late. So in our chart at the very beginning, we talked about, or you should have seen that toddlers need about 12 to 14 hours of sleep each day. Now it's a pretty wide range because it's a pretty big age group. The lower the age group, the higher the sleep need. So if you've got a brand new toddler, they're going to fall more into that 14 hours. Now this is daytime sleep and nighttime sleep combined. So if you have a 2-hour nap in the middle of the day, then you also need to be sleeping about 12 hours at night. If you are getting on up there towards the 3, 4 years old, and maybe the sleep need is only about 12 hours, you get an hour-long nap during the day, well, then you probably will only see about 11 hours of sleep at night. So there's some give and take here, and nailing that wake window and figuring out what the proper bedtime is another big key to success. Now, I want you to consider working families that have to get up, get out of the house by 6 a.m. to get on the road, to drop the kids off at daycare and get to wherever they need to be. Think about that. And if you start to back up your bedtime based on your wake time, so they're getting up at 6 a.m. and they need 12 hours of sleep, what time does that have them going to bed at night? 6 p.m. Does that sound crazy to have kids going to bed at 6 p.m.? I mean, it sounds crazy. And you know what? Before I was a sleep consultant, I would have thought that is ridiculous. How am I supposed to do anything? As a working mom, I don't even get off until 5. By the time I pick the kids up from daycare and get home, you're looking at 5:30. How are we even supposed to have family time if bedtime is at 6 p.m.? And so my biggest answer to that is it's only for a short amount of time, right? Their sleep need is so important at this age. The hierarchy of their entire brain system is being formed right now during these first 3 to 4 years. And it is so important that they get the rest that they need. That sometimes our work schedules or whatever, we really need to make sure that we're putting sleep as a priority. So really establishing, what is that proper bedtime? Now, the other big thing I see with toddlers and preschoolers is, maybe they have an older sibling, or maybe they are involved in sports, or maybe you go to church on a Wednesday night or something, and you're not getting home until 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. And these are some other big things that can really wreak havoc on your sleep schedule. So, I actually had a client that had their preschooler on a t-ball team, and she just flat out said, if the game is not at 5 o'clock, we will not be participating. So all those 7 o'clock games that they had the 4 and 5-year-old group trying to play, like, that is just way too late. If I had to give you a rough estimate of like the best bedtime, but remember we talked about how everything is so fluid and it really just depends on what the schedule looks like in the individual family. But 7:30 is probably like a really good median for toddlers and preschoolers. Typically, so like in my family, we start our day at 7 a.m. And so my guys no longer nap because they're kindergarten and first graders, but we try to be in the bed by 7:30 every night. That means we're starting bedtime routine right around 7 o'clock, and we're in the bed by 7:30 so that they can get the hours that they need. They usually need about 11 hours, and it's going to take a well-rested child about anywhere between 5 to 20 minutes to fall asleep at night, okay? So keeping all of those things in consideration and making sure that they're getting the right amount of consolidated sleep, that's so important. Okay, so last, this is a pretty big one. And I want to kind of preface this to say this is not an attack on technology. It's not an accusation of passive parenting. In today's society, I think that the exposure to technology is actually kind of important. And, I look at my first grader and my kindergartner who they have iPads and laptops in their classrooms with them. They are testing on them. They are using them pretty much daily. But so I think it's very important that they have been exposed to these things so that they know how to work them, they know what's going on. But I think it's important to note here that watching television or playing a game on a tablet or on a phone, it actually has a more, the lasting effect that it has is more than meets the eye, little pun intended, right? Viewing television is actually linked to an increase in the delay of cognitive thinking, language, motor development. Children with developmental delays spent more time being exposed to television, okay? Then we also have reports where heavy viewers report that they have a significantly increased feeling of anxiousness. They are less happy than people that really don't watch very much television, right? And so this is not just, violent television shows. I'm talking about Daniel's Neighborhood, all of the things, because the screens per second that they're moving on the TV is so much faster than what we are used to in just our everyday lives. And so it can increase ADHD, it can increase moodiness. I can see a direct correlation in my children when I have allowed them to be on their electronics too much, okay? So in our family, we try to set limits, and I try to remove it from bedtime as much as possible. So a suggestion, it's not the only way, it's just kind of how we do it in our home. We have like a 30-minute cap. And when they come home from school, this is actually behavior, if they have had a good day at school, if they had a good night going to bed the night before. So this is kind of a prize for them. And they get 30 minutes of electronics, and they get the time to do with whatever they want. And it might not seem like enough of a motivator, but when you start dealing with 3 and 4-year-olds, you have to find something that they really, really like, and put some rewards around it so that they can earn it. This helps in that power struggle, right? Because now my children know. In the very beginning, when I started to put these guidelines around it, because I was seeing this correlation between their behavior and just their eye fatigue. Actually, macular degeneration is directly correlated to the amount of time we are spending looking at television screens, laptop screens, iPhone screens, iPads, all the things that our eyes are doing all day long. And it's linked to that. And I know that I don't want my children to be struggling with macular degeneration, especially when I already know it runs in my family. So we put those guidelines in place, and in the beginning, it was difficult to have the consistency around them. But over time and continuously meeting those kind of struggles and saying, nope, this is how it is. I don't care how much of a meltdown you give me right now. This is the rule, and this is what we're going to stick with. Now the kids have gotten to the point where they will actually set their timer on Alexa. She doesn't talk back. And they know that once the timer goes off, then that's it. They're done. And maybe I have a little bonus. Maybe they earned a little bit more extra time. What I want you to really focus on in regards to sleep is no television time within an hour and a half before bedtime. This is huge, okay? So melatonin is our sleep hormone. Melatonin is produced by the pineal gland. And the pineal gland talks with the optic nerve. When the optic nerve senses light, it says, okay, pineal gland, do not produce melatonin. It is daytime. There's light outside. We don't want anyone to see. We don't want anyone to be drowsy right now. It's daytime, so don't produce that melatonin. Okay, so, but our brain in that aspect, it's a very primitive part of our brain, and it doesn't know the difference between artificial light. It doesn't know the difference between a television screen or light coming in from the sun from outside. It just says that's light, that must be from the sun, so you don't need melatonin. Well, we have to have a certain amount of melatonin built up in our system in order to help with the onset of sleep and to help keep them asleep through the night. So if you're really struggling with some toddler bedtimes and they're having, you know, that maybe you sit them down to watch TV while you're cooking dinner or something, really take a look at the times there. And you need to separate that by an hour or an hour and a half of no TV time before bedtime, okay? You know, another big statistic that I read around this was by the age of 15, a child in today's society will have spent more time watching television than going to school. That's pretty big, right? Like we send them to school for 7 or 8 hours a day, and they're going to have spent more time watching the television. So really work to limit that time. All right, so that was a lot of the biggest things that I see when I'm starting with clients. It makes a huge difference, and it's just kind of the scratching the surface to say, okay, there is more to this sleep thing than just laying down and going to sleep. So if you find that, I want you to try to put some of these things into play and really start to see what kind of differences there is. But remember, consistency is huge, so you have to give it some time. But if you think that maybe you want a little bit more help, you want to dig in a little bit more, I do want to tell you about a new program that I have just started. I'm so excited that I'm doing my first group coaching program. And this was really, I saw a need for community. There were a lot of parents going through the same thing. And I thought, wouldn't it be so amazing if we could go on a journey together? And so with doing it this way, I can kind of expand the amount of support that I give each of my clients. So the program actually takes place over an entire month, okay? So we have it broken into 4 like subsets of the month. We have an implementation week. Well, it's like a prep week where we're getting ready. We're doing all the things that we need to do to get things in place so that once we start, we are good to go. And then we have 2 weeks of implementation where you're making the small changes. When I create a plan for you for this group, it's going to be step by step. On night 1, you're going to do this. On night 2, you're going to do this. If this happens, you're going to do this. And then we're all going to get together and we're going to share what's working, what's not. What do we need to change a little bit? Where do we need to hold consistent? And where do we need to say, okay, oh, that might not be the right set for this family at this time in this age. And so I get to kind of dig in and look at where everyone is at and find a way for you to get some sleep. In this age group, I find that it is a lot of fun to include the toddlers and the preschoolers as well, because ultimately this is them, this is their bodies, they're the ones that are going to be sleeping. So we include activities for you to do with them. We include a special coloring book that is personalized just for them. We have treasures and rewards, but we also have consequences. So there's an entire strategy built around how to set those boundaries up so that when you're ready for bedtime to come, you get a toddler or a preschooler that happily will go to bed, lay down, go to sleep, and stay there all night long. And you get me to hold your hand through the entire month while we implement. Now, I'd say this program is best suited for 2.5 to 5, maybe 6 years old. And any younger than that, it's going to probably work better to do my infant program. And I'll be starting that one up in a couple weeks. So if you have a child, say ages 4 months to about, I guess that 24 to 2.5 years old, 24 months to 2.5 years old, those would be more the infant because they should still be in a crib, okay? We didn't really cover that, but usually what I'm gonna do if I see a kid younger than 3 years old, we're gonna probably put them back in the crib. There are so many things just about mentally, developmentally, that the crib is a better place for them. So what is included, the 4-week program, the customized plan built just for you. We have live support weekly with our Q&As and daily group check-ins. And then we have a self-paced e-course where you get to build the foundation of your plan. And it kind of digs in, but that step-by-step, like day 1, do this, day 2, do this. This is how we're gonna go through. You'll have a year's access to the e-course, so you'll be able to reference it. If things start to get a little shaky down the road, you know, after the month of implementation, maybe 2 months, 3 months down the road, you guys take a vacation and things have kind of got a little rocky, you'll be able to reference it and kind of see, okay, yep, we need to concentrate back in this area. But also you will get a year of support in my alumni Facebook group. So this is where you can actually ask me about that group travel or about your travel in the group, and we can kind of talk about some ways to get back on track, okay? A lot of times I didn't really realize that this would be as big of a need, but when somebody has worked with me, a lot of times down the road, they have questions and concerns that come up, and sometimes it's just easy to bounce them off me and say, hey, am I on the right track? And this is a way that I can do that for my clients and not feel like I'm answering questions all day long, like in the email. So this group coaching program is only $397, and you can actually split it into 2 payments if you want to. You do one at the start and one 2 weeks later, or you can do it all up front. But I have an early bird coupon code. Now it says 1028, which was yesterday, but I've actually extended it until November 3rd. So if you attended the webinar, you'll be able to get this code and get $25 off of that group coaching. And then anyone that attended the webinar also gets an additional bonus, which is you get to have a one-on-one session with me. Outside of the group, you can use it anytime you want within that month, and we can just kind of troubleshoot anything that's going on with you guys. If it's even at the beginning, before the plan starts, and you just want to make sure that the plan is exactly, and you're following it the way that you need to. I want to make sure that we're supporting you and getting you to success. So I talked about at the beginning that I want you to be able to connect with me. So my podcast, Winning at the Mom Life, and this is a podcast where we talk about all the things that have to do with motherhood, and it's really about finding the best you and finding that path to happiness, so that you can be the best mom that you want to be, but also really be the best you, because sometimes we lose our identity when we become moms because we have to be so much to everyone else. And so I would love for you to connect with me on that as well. So I am going to open it up for questions for anybody that's joining me live. Are there any questions that you might have that you want to go through? Let's see, maybe you hit it in the chat. And let me see. I've just unmuted Ashlyn. Do you know if there's any questions in the chat?
I have not seen any. So I think we're good.
All right. Well, I thank you guys so much for being here today. This replay will be available for you so that you can listen to it later, kind of digest. I know I threw a lot at you in a really quick amount of time, but I am so glad that you took some time out of your day to listen to me and my passion about helping everyone sleep a little bit better. So until we speak again, I just want to say sleep well, and I will catch you later. Bye.